Have you ever felt like being kind to someone did you more harm than good? It's a feeling many of us can relate to, but one we rarely talk about. The overwhelming sense of frustration when kindness, instead of being a strength, becomes a weakness. Have you ever helped someone only to have them take advantage of you? We've all experienced the pain of giving more than we should have and regretting it. This concept that kindness might not always be virtuous challenges everything we think we know about compassion and generosity. It forces us to question, can kindness be too much? Can it become something that holds us back instead of pushing us forward? What does it mean to be truly kind? At its core, kindness is about empathy, helping others, and building relationships based on goodwill. But is there a tipping point where kindness ceases to be a virtue and becomes an opportunity for others to exploit? We live in a world that often equates kindness with weakness, where people who are too giving, too understanding, or too forgiving may find themselves overlooked or taken advantage of. The question is, when does kindness turn into a liability? And how do we prevent ourselves from being dragged down by it? There's a fine line between being kind and being a doormat. It's easy to confuse one with the other, and for many, it's a trap they fall into without realizing it. Think about it. How many times have you gone out of your way for someone only to have them walk all over you? The very act of being nice can be twisted, manipulated, and used against you. And yet many of us continue to offer our kindness freely, never questioning if we are being drained by those who have no intention of returning the favor. Is this the price we must pay for compassion? And here's where the psychological twist comes in. Our society teaches us that kindness is virtuous, that it's a moral high ground we must aspire to. But what happens when our kindness starts to backfire? When being generous of heart leads to us being taken advantage of, dismissed, or even disrespected. We start to question ourselves, doubt our worth, and wonder if we've become the people we feared, those who are too weak, too forgiving, too naive. But does this mean we should stop being kind altogether? Is the answer really to give up on kindness, or is it to find a better balance? The truth is, there's no easy answer to this question. It's easy to say be kind and the world will reward you, but that's not always the case. Sometimes kindness leads to disappointment, frustration, and even bitterness. Have you ever been there? You were kind, you gave, you sacrificed, and yet all you got in return was heartache? It's enough to make anyone question their intentions, their motivations, and their very identity. So where do we draw the line? When does kindness become self-sacrifice to the point of personal harm? The emotional and psychological toll it takes can be significant. But how do we address that without losing who we are? We live in a world where boundaries are often tested, where manipulation can sometimes masquerade as kindness. How often have you seen someone offer help only to have it used against them? The more you give, the more people seem to take until there's nothing left of you. The truly kind-hearted are sometimes seen as soft or easy targets. Their willingness to help is misconstrued as weakness, and the more they offer, the more they deplete their own energy, mental well-being, and even their self-respect. But what if the true act of kindness is not always giving until you have nothing left, but learning to protect yourself from those who would exploit your generosity? There's an undeniable psychological toll on those who constantly put others first. It can feel like an endless cycle of giving, only to be met with disappointment and exhaustion. The emotional fatigue that accompanies this lifestyle is overwhelming. It can lead to burnout, depression, and a sense of hopelessness. And yet people continue to encourage us to be kind, as if that is the only solution to every problem. But why? Is it because kindness is truly the best option? Or because it's easier to tell someone to give without acknowledging the real cost? What if we started teaching people not just to be kind, but to also recognize when their kindness is being used against them? Think about the relationships you've had in your life, whether with friends, family, or colleagues. How many of those relationships were based on an equal exchange of kindness and support? How many times did you give everything you had, only to find that the other person took without offering anything in return? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking kindness is always the right choice, but sometimes it's necessary to ask ourselves, am I helping or am I hurting myself? Are we being kind or are we simply enabling others to take advantage of our generosity? Kindness, when given unconditionally, should be a powerful force for good, but when it is unbalanced, it can do more harm than good. Too often the world tells us that kindness should be limitless, but in reality we are only human. Our hearts, our spirits, our energy, everything has a limit. So when does kindness become a weakness? When does it cross the line from generosity to self-detriment? That's the question we need to answer, and the answers aren't always as simple as just be kind. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others is to set clear boundaries and know when enough is enough. Finally, think about the deeper emotional impact this has on you. When your kindness is unreciprocated, when it's exploited or ignored, it can leave you feeling emotionally drained and disconnected. You may start to feel like your kindness is not valued, or worse, like you're just a tool to be used. And this isn't just a hypothetical scenario. This is the lived experience of many people who give and give, only to find that their emotional reserves are depleted and their kindness is often mistaken for weakness. Is this fair? Should we accept that kindness always comes at a cost? Or should we begin to recognize when our kindness is being misused and start taking back our power? There's a dangerous misconception that being kind means being subservient. It's as if the very act of being compassionate automatically removes your right to assert yourself, to have needs, or to demand respect. People begin to see you as a source to exploit, not as an individual with your own value and limitations. And yet, when you dare to set boundaries, to say no, it feels as if the very kindness you once offered is now held against you. You're labeled selfish, cold, or unhelpful. The line between kindness and weakness becomes blurry, and your genuine intent becomes distorted into something ugly. Why does the world treat kindness this way? Why do we give so much of ourselves, even when it causes us pain? Is it because we've been taught that kindness is the highest virtue? Or do we give because we fear rejection or conflict and we think kindness will shield us from the consequences? The psychological need for approval can drive us to extremes. We think that if we are kind enough, we'll be loved, accepted, or praised. But the truth is, kindness alone doesn't guarantee any of these things. You could give everything you have, and still some will take advantage, leaving you feeling hollow and defeated. But what's the solution? Do we stop being kind altogether? Here's the paradox. Kindness is not inherently a weakness. In fact, genuine kindness requires strength, emotional, mental, and spiritual strength. However, kindness that is given recklessly without thought or boundaries can become a crutch that holds us back from achieving personal growth. It can be easier to focus on others, to care for them, than to confront our own needs, desires, and struggles. And this avoidance can cause harm to our own well-being. At what point do we recognize that we are allowed to prioritize ourselves? When do we admit that self-care is not selfish but necessary for our survival? Look around you. How many people do you know who struggle with giving too much of themselves? They constantly pour into others until there's nothing left in their own cups. Their kindness becomes the foundation of their identity, and as their resources run out, so does their sense of self. It's tragic to watch because you can see it coming from a mile away. The moment someone forgets to care for themselves, when their kindness is no longer sustainable, they begin to resent the very people they helped. Why do we wait until we are on the brink of emotional and physical exhaustion to recognize this imbalance? The key to understanding when kindness becomes a weakness is realizing that kindness does not always mean agreeing with or enabling others. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to refuse to help them, to let them face the consequences of their actions. Tough love, though hard, can be the most compassionate choice. People may not always thank you for it in the moment, but it's necessary for both their growth and yours. Allowing people to take responsibility for themselves is not cruelty, it's a gift. It's a form of kindness that encourages personal accountability rather than fostering dependency. But let's not kid ourselves here. It's easy to feel guilty about withholding help or support. Society, especially today's world of social media and likes, makes us feel like we have to constantly be giving. We have to be the hero, the savior, the one people turn to. The pressure to be perpetually kind can feel suffocating, but what happens when you give and are left empty inside? The very nature of kindness becomes an oppressive force rather than an uplifting one. We must ask ourselves, are we being kind because we genuinely care, or because we fear the consequences of not giving? And if it's the latter, perhaps it's time to reevaluate our motives. In our world of constant demands, the weight of kindness can feel unbearable. People expect more than we can offer, and our own needs are often pushed aside in the pursuit of pleasing others. But here's the truth. If you continue to give without ever taking anything for yourself, eventually you will burn out. Your mental health will deteriorate, your relationships will weaken, and you'll find yourself stuck in a cycle of giving that never satisfies. At what point do you say enough is enough? When do you stop allowing others to siphon your energy and start reclaiming what's rightfully yours? The emotional toll of unbalanced kindness can't be ignored. Think about how much of yourself you've given away over the years, your time, your patience, your love. It's easy to feel like kindness is the answer to everything. But when it takes a toll on your emotional, physical, and mental health, it's no longer a strength. Kindness that comes at the expense of your well-being is no longer a virtue. It's a trap. And when you're trapped, it's nearly impossible to see a way out, because kindness has become so deeply woven into your identity that you forget who you are without it. But there is a way out. There's always a way to reclaim your boundaries, your sense of self, and your peace of mind. And let's not forget the manipulation that often accompanies unbalanced kindness. There are people out there who will take full advantage of your willingness to help, often pretending to appreciate your kindness while secretly exploiting it. It's a harsh reality, but one that many of us have experienced. The people you think you're helping may be the very ones draining you, leaving you with nothing in return. And it's not always intentional. They may not even realize they're doing it. But when your kindness is consistently taken advantage of, the damage to your self-worth is real. How do you cope with this? How do you preserve your kindness without letting it become a tool for exploitation? The answer lies in self-awareness. Kindness, when coupled with self-respect and clear boundaries, becomes a powerful force. But when it's given without any thought for your own needs, it becomes a tool for your own destruction. It's time to redefine what kindness means, and to recognize that it's not about sacrificing yourself for others. It's about finding balance. Kindness can be a strength, but only when it's grounded in self-care, self-awareness, and mutual respect. Let us be kind, yes, but let us also be wise in how we give, so that we never lose ourselves in the process. It's clear now, kindness isn't just about giving, it's about knowing when to give and when to step back. We've been conditioned to believe that kindness is an endless well, that we should pour ourselves into others without concern for our own limits. But think about it. When you are exhausted, when your own needs are unmet, how effective can your kindness really be? When your emotional tank is empty, when you're running on fumes, can you truly be the support someone else needs? Or are you just going through the motions, hoping that somehow your kindness will make everything better? It's time to ask, is this the kind of kindness that truly serves others? Or is it just a facade? We all know the feeling of giving too much, of saying yes when we wanted to say no, and watching the consequences unfold in front of us. The guilt that creeps in when you realize you've let yourself be taken advantage of is almost unbearable. But why do we do this to ourselves? Is it because we fear being seen as unkind or selfish? Is it because society has drilled into us the idea that kindness should be endless, that being kind is the only thing that defines our worth? When did we become so afraid of drawing lines, of saying I can't give any more without feeling like we're failing? Here's a critical question we need to face head on. Can kindness be selfish? Is it possible that we've turned kindness into a form of self-validation? In wanting to be seen as kind, in desiring the praise and approval that comes with it, we might actually be seeking something more than just helping others. We may be seeking recognition, admiration, or a sense of worthiness. The need to be seen as the nice person can cloud our judgment, making us forget that kindness should be about the other person, not about how it makes us feel. The true strength of kindness comes from giving without expecting anything in return, but when we start expecting recognition, the line between kindness and selfishness becomes dangerously blurred. Let's be real. How often do we look at acts of kindness through the lens of personal gain? We like to think of ourselves as pure, as selfless, but if we dig deeper, we may discover that our kindness is tied to an emotional payoff. When we help others, do we feel better about ourselves? Do we enjoy the validation that comes with being the one who gives? It's a tough question, but one that needs to be addressed. If we're constantly looking for validation, we might end up draining ourselves without even realizing it. Our kindness becomes a trap, not because we are giving too much, but because we are seeking something in return. even if it's just the satisfaction of being good enough in others' eyes. What happens when we try to redefine kindness, not as an endless supply to others, but as something that must come with boundaries? What happens when we stop measuring our worth by how much we can give, and instead start measuring it by how much we value ourselves? That's terrifying, right? The fear of not being kind enough, of disappointing others, of losing love or respect, keeps us trapped in a cycle of giving that leaves us depleted. But isn't it time to redefine what kindness really is? Maybe kindness isn't about giving until you have nothing left to give. Maybe it's about respecting yourself enough to know that you deserve care and attention too. We've all seen how some people seem to take kindness for granted. They ask for help, receive it, and then move on without a second thought, as if it was their entitlement all along. But this isn't a reflection of our kindness. It's a reflection of their lack of appreciation or respect. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that everyone deserves our kindness, that everyone will reciprocate in kind. But the truth is, not everyone will. Not everyone will value your efforts, your time, or your energy. That's why it's so important to recognize when your kindness is no longer appreciated or when it's being used to manipulate you. The act of being kind must always come from a place of genuine goodwill, not from a place of fear or obligation. Sometimes kindness becomes a weapon used against us. How often have you seen people manipulate others through guilt or emotional coercion, all under the guise of kindness? They may tell you, if you really cared, you would help, or aren't you supposed to be a kind person? This is where kindness becomes a weapon, used to force you into compliance, to make you feel bad for saying no, to shame you for protecting your own boundary. And the more we fall into this trap, the more we enable this manipulation, letting others use our kindness to control us, leaving us feeling powerless and frustrated. How do we stop this cycle? How do we reclaim our right to say no without feeling guilt? The first step is to recognize that kindness is not synonymous with self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice for the sake of others' happiness, especially when it's unreciprocated, is not kindness. It's martyrdom. The kindest thing you can do for both yourself and others is to know when to stop giving and when to focus on your own needs. It's not selfish to take care of yourself, it's essential. Only when we take care of our own well-being can we truly offer the kind of support that is both sustainable and genuine. It's time to stop martyring ourselves in the name of kindness and to start practicing self-compassion and self-respect. One of the most important realizations we must come to is that kindness is not a transaction. We do not give because we expect something in return, and we should never feel entitled to someone else's gratitude or admiration for our kindness. However, when kindness is given to the point of depletion, when it becomes an expectation or a burden, it no longer serves its true purpose. It becomes a cycle of giving without receiving, which eventually leads to resentment. It's okay to give, but it's also okay to expect respect and consideration in return. There's no shame in saying, "I need help too." And there's no shame in setting boundaries that protect your mental and emotional health. The most powerful form of kindness is not unconditional giving. It's balanced giving. It's the kind of kindness that allows you to support others while also supporting yourself. It's the kind of kindness that recognizes when you've given enough and when it's time to step back. The world may try to convince you that kindness means endless giving, but that is simply not sustainable. The real strength of kindness comes when we find the balance between caring for others and caring for ourselves. The heart of kindness lies in the ability to give freely without expecting anything in return. Yet when we are overly focused on others' needs, we often forget our own. We start to equate selflessness with being kind, but this belief can be dangerous. It often leads us to neglect ourselves until we are empty, emotionally drained, and unable to give anything of value. Real kindness, true generosity, comes from a place of abundance, not emptiness. You cannot pour from an empty cup, yet too many of us try to do just that, hoping that somehow, the more we give, the better we will feel. But the opposite is true. The more you give without replenishing, the more you diminish your own ability to help others in the long run. So what happens when we continue to overextend ourselves? What happens when we push past our limits to be kind? We start to feel resentful, angry, and hurt. And these feelings, when ignored, can fester and grow into something much darker: burnout, frustration, and a complete loss of motivation. Kindness, which once felt like a rewarding act of love, becomes a burden, an obligation, and ultimately a source of pain. How often do we tell ourselves, I just need to help one more time, only to find that each additional act of kindness feels heavier than the last? How much longer can we keep this up before we break? Kindness can also cloud our judgment, blinding us to the reality of a situation. It's easy to think that we can solve everyone's problems or that we should be the ones to fix everything. But there are times when kindness is not the answer. Sometimes people need space to grow, to fail, and to learn from their mistakes. It's hard to accept, but there are times when stepping back is the best form of kindness you can offer. Letting someone struggle, not out of cruelty but out of compassion, allows them the opportunity to grow stronger and more independent. Yet many of us persist in our kindness, believing that by solving their problems we are doing them a favor. In reality, we may only be delaying their growth and reinforcing unhealthy patterns of dependency. But here's the truth. When we become overly focused on others' needs, we risk losing touch with our own. We become so enmeshed in the lives of those we care for that we forget to care for ourselves. The pursuit of perpetual kindness, where we endlessly give without checking in with our own well-being, erodes our self-worth. We start to feel that our value lies only in what we can do for others, not in who we are. This can lead to a distorted sense of self, a feeling that we are only as good as our ability to help. And when that help is no longer needed or appreciated, we are left questioning our own purpose and worth. The paradox of kindness lies in its power to heal and harm simultaneously. We've all seen how kindness can bring people together, make them feel seen and valued. Yet when kindness becomes a tool for manipulation or is given without thought, it can have devastating effects. There are individuals who thrive on kindness because they know it will lead to something for them, whether that be validation, support, or something more. They exploit the kindness of others, turning it into a mechanism of control, feeding off the good intentions of people who may be too trusting, too eager to please. So how do we avoid becoming prey to these manipulative dynamics? The first step is recognizing that kindness should never come at the cost of your own dignity or well-being. Being kind does not mean that you allow others to take advantage of you, nor does it mean you should sacrifice your happiness for the sake of another. Real kindness, the kind that creates genuine connections and builds relationships, requires mutual respect. It's about helping without losing yourself, giving without emptying your spirit. If you feel drained after helping someone, it's important to ask yourself why. Are you giving because it's truly what you want to do? Or are you giving to gain approval, to avoid confrontation, or to feel needed? We've also all experienced the frustration of giving kindness to someone who takes it for granted. There's an emotional toll that comes when our efforts go unnoticed, when our acts of care are met with indifference. This imbalance leaves us questioning our motives. Why did we give so much only to be met with silence or worse, criticism? This imbalance can cause bitterness and a feeling of injustice. And when we keep allowing ourselves to be in this situation, it's easy to fall into the trap of feeling like we've been used. The sense of being taken for granted erodes the joy that should come from acts of kindness, turning them into a weight we are forced to carry rather than a gift we freely offer. The danger of this kind of thinking is that it can slowly start to poison our view of kindness itself. We begin to associate kindness with disappointment, with emotional depletion, and with regret. And if we're not careful, we can start withdrawing from kindness altogether, thinking that the cost is too high, that it isn't worth it. But the problem isn't with kindness. It's with our inability to set boundaries, to recognize when our kindness is being misused, and to know when enough is enough. It's essential that we learn how to give without depleting ourselves, to extend kindness while still preserving our energy, our joy, and our sense of self. This is where boundaries become a crucial aspect of true kindness. When you create boundaries, you are not being unkind, you're being wise. Boundaries allow you to protect your emotional and mental health while still being able to help those around you. You can say no when you need to without feeling guilty. You can give when you are able to without stretching yourself beyond your limits. Boundaries ensure that your kindness remains a strength, not a weakness, that it continues to serve you and others in a sustainable, healthy way. So let's reframe kindness. Kindness is not about endless giving or self-sacrifice. It is about discernment, balance, and wisdom. True kindness means giving from a place of abundance, not emptiness. It means helping others without sacrificing your own well-being, without compromising your self-respect. It means setting boundaries